We are ready to put cheese on everything on the Talkback Show, on the radio, or whatever audiovisual device you choose to use. Welcome to the GBC podcast, where we talk about the Packers in our hometown of Green Bay. This is episode 11, created on March 22nd, 2022. Hi, I'm John. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. Along with me, Jeff in Minnesota, Neil out on the East Coast. Say hello, gentlemen, and tell us what you're drinking.
Hello, gentlemen. I am drinking a Knob Creek flavored old fashioned.
Hello, everyone. I have been thinking about Ukraine. I've been thinking a lot about the various Russian repressions over the year. I've been thinking about the Prague Spring. So I'm drinking one of my absolute favorite beers, Pilsner Urquell.
And no relation to Jeff's Knob, I've got a nice frothy gin Alexander. It's an ice cream drink. All right, gentlemen.
No relation.
And everyone, you can find us on YouTube and Twitter at Green Bay Chat and Facebook at the GBC Podcast Green Bay Chat. Not a lot of topics tonight. We are really going to just look at more of the free agency moves, who's coming into Green Bay, who's staying in Green Bay, who's left Green Bay. And we'll talk about our Packers players of the past as well, the player of the past and our history lesson kind of going together tonight. But let's kind of start off with some of the new news, not the nude news, gentlemen, the new news that we have. Since last time we had Rasul Douglas, Devondre Campbell and Robert Tonyan all confirmed signing back in Green Bay. Zadarius Smith with a kind of a psych moment with the Baltimore Ravens. He ends up in Minnesota. We'll talk about his press conference today. And the Packers kind of quietly signing a guy named Jarran Reed. Jarran Reed, a former second-round draft pick of the Seattle Seahawks, played 5 seasons in Seattle, last year with the Chiefs, comes in to help firm up that defensive line. For the Packers, 6'3", 306 pounds. And Jeff, you said Kenny Clark was a little happy about that signing.
Yes, indeed.
Neil, you're excited about the defensive moves with Douglas and Campbell, though, right?
I'm excited because, fundamentally, we talked about what our possibilities were as far as the salary cap and free agency were concerned. And basically, we assumed, well, there's just no way that we're going to have money to sign, for example, Rasul Douglas. You assume he's going to get a contract that's going to be a cap hit or a salary certainly in the range of $10 million a year. You assume Devondre Campbell is going to be over $10 million a year, and we just weren't anywhere close to having that sort of money. And somehow we got a hometown discount on Devondre Campbell. We got a hometown discount on Rasul Douglas, and now we can actually sign other people as well. Of course, this all comes with Devontae no longer being here, but nonetheless, this certainly fundamentally changes the thoughts about the defense. And yeah, we've got a situation where the defense looked to be somebody where there could be a position or a side where we could have a lot of attrition. And all of a sudden, instead of attrition, we're actually adding people. That's remarkable. And that certainly forebodes well.
Well, we're going to have a strong defensive backfield there with our, you got 3 top corners in Jaire Alexander, Eric Stokes, and now Rasul Douglas. Going to firm things up and hopefully some stronger safety play this year from Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage. That back 5 is going to do great. Now we're looking at what the front 6 or depending on how they split it up, front 5, front 7, whatever.
I mean, let's just go to Jaire Alexander, right? We still haven't extended Jaire, and he didn't play most of last year. So we've got, the potential of a better defensive backfield and building in even more cap space as a result of this. It's remarkable where we are compared to where we thought we were a couple of weeks before the start of the league year.
Absolutely.
Well, it's looking like, this might be a situation where the defense is going to carry the offense. Because with the draft picks, I'm not saying that all the draft picks will go to offense or defense, but typically defensive draft picks make more of an impact or have an opportunity to make more of an impact or a quicker impact. So, if the defense is, top 5 or whatever and can carry the offense, and that's really something where Rodgers doesn't have to, work his magic, pull one out of his ass every, 2 or 3 games. Let's let the defense just shut people down. And then whatever the offense can do it would be a bonus. And if they carry him, fantastic.
Well, I mean, fundamentally, this goes to the strategy of quarterbacks that win Super Bowls late in their career. They've got a stout rushing game. They've got a stout defense, and the quarterback doesn't have to do the things that they had to do in their prime. And this looks to be what we're setting up exactly.
Yeah. Which is a positive thing because you've got, subpar quarterbacks late in their career winning championships or doing very well. And, Rodgers, we'll see how it goes. But again, he's coming off another MVP year. So he's still good, and obviously running game that hasn't changed. Offensive line, we'll see. But, getting Tunyon back, I think is huge. And, it's like I said, let the defense carry the offense. That's fine.
Let's go even further, right? I mean, I'm going to bet that Rodgers is going to be better than late Manning. He's going to be better than late Elway. And if he's better than those two, and those two could win Super Bowls late in their career, I feel pretty good.
Yeah.
And speaking of quarterbacks, why are all the quarterbacks going to the AFC? I don't think I could name half of the starting quarterbacks in the NFC right now.
John, I've done the research for you, so you don't have to. But I mean, it is remarkable, right? Russell Wilson is gone. Matt Ryan was just traded. The quarterbacks that are sort of still open and out there, like Baker Mayfield and Jimmy Garoppolo. But I mean, it's a disaster. And so I'm going to go with the conspiracy theory here that Roger Goodell wants Aaron Rodgers to get another ring. And if you just fundamentally take all of the good quarterbacks away from the NFC, throw them into the AFC, have Rodgers have absolutely no resistance as far as getting the Super Bowl, because the numbers are, it's just ridiculous. And, in the West, you've got Trey Lance, Drew Lock, Kyler Murray, and Matt Stafford, two good quarterbacks total. Tom Brady is going to be old. I just don't have any.
He is
faith.
old.
Yeah,
not going to be.
The Saints maybe have Jameis. They maybe get Baker Mayfield. That is not a good situation. The Falcons, I don't even know you, John. You mentioned it's some undrafted free agent.
Marcus Mariota, baby.
That's right. They did trade for Mariota.
That's right. The Falcons traded for Mariota. And then, which again, he's not even ever finished a season and played a full season. The Panthers currently have Sam Darnold. The Lions, Goff. The Bears, Fields. The Vikings, Cousin, who, by the way, they extended for an extra $45 million. I love the Vikings decision-making process. And then in the East, you've got the Giants, who thought Mitch Trubisky was going to be an upgrade, but still have Daniel Jones. The football team traded for Carson Wentz. Philadelphia has Jalen Hurts, and then you've got Dak. So I count a grand total of potentially 5 good quarterbacks: Murray, Stafford, Rodgers, Dak, and maybe Tom Brady. That's the sum total of good quarterbacking in the entire NFC right now. That's a good situation to be in.
Bring Neil up to speed. The Washington football team, Neil, did officially adopt the Commodores.
I know, but they're more fun calling. It's more fun calling them the Commanders. I think
they should be called the Commodores. I like the Commodores.
The Commodores are just Washington goes commando.
I've got Vanderbilt on my brain today because of their new logo, but yeah, Lionel Richie and the Commodores sounds a lot better for the Washington football team. Jeff, tell us about Minnesota today. Zadarius Smith signing with the Vikings. He's got his press conference going on there today. Now, my favorite part about this is, how the Packers signed Zadarius 4 years ago. Vikings fans who, will say anything negative they can at any time, tried to tell Packer fans that Zadarius Smith was a terrible signing or a washed up player or anything negative you can imagine saying. And now today, I assume Viking fans are leading the charge of getting the greatest free agent signing of probably recent history for their defense.
Well, Reggie White be damned. I mean, Zadarius Smith is in town. So, no, the thing that struck me, I didn't watch. I know that he was here. Now, what was fascinating about this is the fact that there's a big digital billboard outside of US Bank Stadium. And they put that Zadarius yesterday, when he initially came into town, that he was in town. Not that they had signed him, literally that he was just in town. So I don't want to say that smacks of desperation, but if you're putting, if you're announcing to the world that you're talking to a free agent that has already shunned one team because he was looking for more money, and God bless him. He when he shunned Baltimore, well, I tell you, he ended up, really the 4-year, $35 million contract that Baltimore has offered him. Now it's a 3-year, $45 million contract in Minnesota. Well, very good then. That's if they're going to sign him for it, fine. You've got a 29-year-old defensive end who has a surgically repaired back, and who played a handful of snaps for the Packers last year. you know what? If they get a year or two out of him, so be it. But this is the Vikings. Sometimes they play in free agency, sometimes they don't. But just the fact that they were celebrating him coming here was kind of weird, So I just, that's kind of like the whole Jim Harbaugh thing going back to when they were looking for a coach, right? They were all a lot of fans were super pumped that Jim Harbaugh was in town. And then before he was even out of town, he says, nope, not taking the job. So it's a weird, weird situation, with a new regime. I'm not sure what's going to happen here or what is, what the expectations are. I mean, obviously you've got a very, very, very expensive quarterback, a good receiver, but I don't know. Easy, Neil. Breathe, Neil.
It's just remarkable that their solution to Kirk Cousins costing more money is to give him another 45 million guaranteed. So he's now up to 230 million in his career as far as earnings. But, why extend somebody that, was decidedly mediocre when it actually counted? I can only assume that they think, well, he's the next Matt Stafford who's stunk for a long time, but all of a sudden he's going to be miraculous by changing scenes and going from Minnesota to Minnesota.
Well, maybe part of that change is getting in the Rams offensive coordinator as well. And that could be part of what they're watching as well. Jeff, I can only assume, though, you'll have to reroute your commute to work tomorrow because the Minnesota will be having the offseason Super Bowl victory.
The victory parade. That's right. Yep. Yeah, it's
good for them. Yeah, they always win the offseason, don't they?
They certainly do. Just ask any fan.
Ask any Vikings fan.
Yep. Or Paul Allen.
So to grab the tweet that came out, Jeff, I think you sent this over. No, Neil sent this over to us earlier today from Tim Backus. I'll read it to you. I can see it now. And Paul Allen on the broadcast. Rodgers drops back to throw. The pocket collapses, and it's Darius Smith with his second sack of the night. What an effort against his former team. Green Bay will have to punt. And Minnesota gets the ball back, down 34-13 with 1:54 to play.
I'm going to read the tweet, but I'm going to read it in Paul Allen. Rodgers drops back to throw. The pocket collapses, and it's Darius Smith with his second sack of the night. What an effort against his former team. Green Bay will have to punt. And Minnesota gets the ball back, down 34-13. With 1:54 to play.
I think you definitely growled that out really well. That was very guttural Paul Allen, Jeff.
Yes, we can thank Miss Tobias for that.
Your guttural French? Yes, very good.
My guttural French, exactly.
All right. Well, we didn't have a lot to talk about tonight, but we're going to probably, we'll do something that we picked on the Vikings fans. Let's do something that Packers fans typically do. We're going to relish in the glory years. So we're going to look at our Packer player of the past and our history lesson. And we're looking at number 14, the retired jersey of number 14, one Don Hutson. Neil, I think you have a lot to tell us about the Alabama Antelope.
So Don Hutson, of course, every Packers fan knows him as a legendary player, one of the small number of retired numbers for the Packers. But I think all of us, when we started to actually look into Don Hutson's history, realized he was even better than we thought he was. Just a quick background on him: born 1913, Pine Bluff, Arkansas. In his youth, he liked to play with snakes because it gave him quickness and agility. In high school, he was an all-state basketball player, but actually only played 1 year of football. And yet the combination of his speed and his athleticism caused him to go to the University of Alabama for college, where he was an end for 3 years, including being opposite of Bear Bryant on the other side. In the 1934 Rose Bowl, he had 6 receptions, 165 yards, 2 touchdowns, plus an end-around touchdown as Alabama was named national champions, first-team All-American. And so as he's finished his college career, he's looking into the pros, and the NFL was not so attractive at that point. So the Packers, Curly Lambeau was impressed by what he had done and how he could balance with the Packers' current players. The Brooklyn Dodgers also were impressed. Both of them gave him contracts. He apparently signed both of them. And the NFL commissioner at the time decided the Packers' signature came in first. It was finished first. But Curly Lambeau was so impressed by him, he gave Don Hutson 2 contracts. one from one bank account for $150 a game, one from a different bank account for $150 a game. So nobody knew exactly how much money he was making. So obviously Don Hutson changed the position of wide receiver, not just for the Packers, but as far as the NFL was concerned, played for the Packers from 1935 to 1945. Played on 3 of those NFL championship teams that, as we all know, 29, 30, 31, then 36, 39, 44. Those were all NFL championships with Don Hutson. The Packers actually played in 4 NFL championship games over Don Hutson's time. The 1936 championship at the Polo Grounds, where the Packers won over the Giants, in which a touchdown pass to Hutson was the first scoring of the game. In 1938, Don Hutson was injured, so he only played a little bit. We lost to the Giants 21-6 in that 38 championship. 39 championship, we beat the Giants at Wisconsin State Fair Park, where the stadium was known as the Dairy Bowl, and they christened the stadium by breaking a bottle of milk at halftime. And also in the 1944 NFL championship, again over the Giants. We played the Giants 4 years in a row, or 4 consecutive NFL championships as far as our NFL championship games: 36, 38, 39, and 44. So Don Hutson, 3-time NFL championship. The MVP didn't even start until half the time that he was in the league, but he won 2 of those. He was 8 times first-team All-Pro, led the league in receiving touchdowns 9 times in an 11-year career, led the league in receptions 8 times in an 11-year career. 5 times he was the NFL scoring leader. And in 1940, which is when he started being a kicker, he hadn't kicked his first 5 years in the NFL. 1940, he says, I'm going to be a kicker too. He led the league in interceptions, scoring touchdowns, and scoring total points and receiving touchdowns. As a sort of indication of how Don Hutson changed the game, Don Hutson had the first NFL season with over 1,000 receiving yards. He was also the receiver when Cecil Isbell had the first quarterback with 2,000 passing yards in a season. NFL Hall of Fame, obviously, College Football Hall of Fame, finished with 488 receptions, 799 yards, 99 touchdowns. And interestingly, he was sort of the Brett Favre before Brett Favre, or Brett Favre before Forrest Gregg. And then he retired after the 1942, 1943, 1944, and 1945 seasons. In the one of the reporters for the Pittsburgh Press said he's the holder of the record for most times coming out of retirement. But the statistics all sound great, but in the context of modern receiving numbers, they don't sound like just out of this world amazing. They're great, of course, but I think really looking at individual seasons and what those actually meant is the key. And to me, you look at his 1942 season. So 11-game season, he had 74 receptions, 1,211 yards, 17 touchdowns. As a kicker, he was 33 of 34 on extra points. He had 138 total points. If we translate that to a 17-game season, that would be 114 receptions, 1,872 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 213 points. And oh, by the way, he also had 7 interceptions that year, which would translate to 11 interceptions overall. Total had 105 touchdowns in his career. But he also set a record in 1945, his last season, for 29 points in a quarter with 4 touchdowns and 5 extra points in a 57-21 beating of the Lions. The numbers, of course, are always things that we've been aware of, but you put them in the context of the time. You put in the context that he also played on defense and had 30 interceptions on defense that he kicked. The receiving numbers in and of themselves put him as among the greatest of all time. And then he had these other things on top of it. This is somebody who was truly incredible.
The question that always you have to wonder is, how fast was Don Hutson? Because back then in the 30s, they didn't run the 40-yard dash. We didn't go to the combine.
There was no combine.
But he did. He did get clocked running a 9.7 second 100-yard dash. That's the 100-yard dash, not the 100-meter dash. And the record at the time when Hutson ran that 9.7 second 100, the world record at the time was 9.4 seconds. The other thing is he also ran the 220 in 21.7 seconds, 220 yards. That's yeah, in 21.7 seconds. Yeah. So the professional football back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, for the most part, was a bunch of average-sized white guys just kind of kicking around dirt on the field. And here's Don Hutson running circles around every single person on the field all day, every Sunday that they played. To watch that just had to have been incredible. I mean, defenses just had to be stymied trying to figure out how to catch up to this guy. And then, like you said, Neil, playing both ways when he is on defense, he's everywhere. No matter where you go with the ball, there he is. And he has 30 career interceptions. That ranks him tied for 10th overall in Packer franchise history. We know Bobby Dillon, number 1 on that list. But here's your trivia question, Neil, Jeff. Who is the Packer player tied at number 10 with Don Hutson at 30 career interceptions?
Neil?
Yeah, our mothers listening to this.
Neil?
This is the Barb alert. Don't listen to this.
Barb alert. It's Tremont motherfucking Williams. Although Tremont had the postseason ones on top of that. So, but
Don Hutson is tied 10th all time in interceptions as well.
Well, I mean, let's take the photo that Jeff chose for this segment, right? I mean, Don Hutson's Batman, right? I mean, that photo says Don Hutson is Batman, and that's guy who was able to do everything. And yeah.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is that he was not a wide receiver. Back when he played, his position was an end. Therefore, where did he line up? Basically where a tight end lines up today. He wasn't flanked out.
Although Curly Lambeau did do that as well as part of his strategy. So,
but it was
Hudson's listed at 6'1", 183 pounds. That's me senior year of high school. I was not nearly as fast.
By the way, Don Hutson also had a touchdown pass for the Packers. So maybe not a duck either. So
he did everything but sell concessions at halftime.
Well, he had 284 yards rushing in his career as well. So he
did it all at Green Bay Stadium, right? So
that's correct.
His whole career was at Old City
all
Stadium.
11 years. So Neil, you've gone over a lot of the stats. So I've got a few accolades that I just want to, what awards and things like that, kind of detail that a little bit. But then as I was going through this, it got me thinking, okay, what makes a Hall of Fame wide receiver? So that's the teaser. So I'll give you a couple more accolades on Donald Montgomery Hudson. So like we mentioned, his jersey was retired. It was the first Packer jersey retired. That was in 1951. He was a charter member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That was in 1963. And then he's also part of the Packers inaugural Hall of Fame in 1970.
Also charter of the College Football Hall of Fame.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, of course he was, based on all these other ones. So at one point, he held 19 league, or when he retired, he held 19 league records, 8 career records, 4 single game records, 1 game record, and 6 miscellaneous records. I don't know what that means, but that's a shit ton of league records. He was dominant, as we talked about. Neil went through the NFL MVP, which was very fledgling. I think it started, 1940?
Yeah.
So he won it in 1941 and 1942. We talked about the interceptions, the receptions, his rushing. He was a force to be reckoned with. So, okay. So as we mentioned, so he had 105 total touchdowns so he played 116 games. Now there's a guy that maybe you've heard of recently that's also played 116 games for the Packers, who isn't going to play any more games for the Packers. One, Davante Adams. Interesting.
So what you're saying is all of these records of Hudson's on the team are now safe.
Well, that's yes. So in looking at, so I looked at some of Davante's stats. So 160, like I said, the exact same number of games, which is a little freaky. 669 receptions, 8,121 yards, 73 touchdowns. Now, the other thing about Hutson, which is quite remarkable, is his average yards per catch. 16.4, which is that the best ever? No. But that's pretty fucking good considering this was in the 30s and 40s. So Devontae Adams, his average is 12.1 on those 669 receptions.
Imagine, let's just go back. Let's imagine Don Hutson with the West Coast offense and the destruction that he could create with that.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, once he got in the open field, he was gone, but it was just getting into the open field and all the other minutia that he had to go with. And oh, by the way, it's not like he had a quarterback that was throwing him open or, whatever, in the passing game was still, in a pretty fledgling state. So the fact that he was just, he was Batman, like you said. So looking at some of the other notable Packer receivers. So James Lofton. So he is in the Hall of Fame. He played 9 years with the Packers. So during those 9 years, 136 games, 530 passes, 9,656 yards, 49 touchdowns. But what's remarkable about James Lofton, and one could argue why he's in the Hall of Fame, his average, 18.2 yards, which is near the top. I mean, that's unheard of. 18.2. That was in Green Bay. And then obviously he played for a couple Buffalo and a couple other teams, Raiders. Interesting. So here's a trivia question. I'll give you the answer, but this is kind of fun. So James Lofton is the first player to score a touchdown in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. There you go. He's inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2003. So then a couple other receivers for just comparison's sake. Sterling Sharp. Now he was on his way, I think, to a Hall of Fame career before the neck injury cut it short. So he had 112 games as a Packer, 595 receptions, 8,134 yards, 65 touchdowns with a 13.7 average. Jordy Nelson, 136 games, so the same number as Lofton, 550 receptions, 20 more, way fewer yards though, 7,848, 69 touchdowns, 20 more touchdowns than Lofton, 14.3 average. Donald Driver. Now Donald is kind of the Packer Iron Man in terms of the receivers. 205 games, 743 receptions, 10,137 yards, 61 touchdowns, and a 13.6 average. Now, not to get too regressive here, not to stir the pot too much, free agent Quintorris Lopez Jones, otherwise known as Julio Jones, currently is 25th all time with 879 receptions. So Julio, at last I checked, is a free agent still. There's been some talk about bringing him to the Packers. So he's got 879 receptions, only 145 games. He's got 13,330 yards, 61 touchdowns with an average of 15.2 per catch. He needs 62 receptions, so a solid year with a team to move into the top 20 all time in receptions.
Sounds to me like a better version of signing Andre Rison.
Uh-huh. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I don't know.
I wanted to jump back on some of those Don Hutson stats as well, because one of the stats that really wasn't a statistic again back in the 30s and 40s was the yards after the catch. Mm-hmm. And you talk about those average yards on his pass receptions. Now, Arnie Herber, Cecil Isbell, and Irv Comp were not throwing the ball 30, 40, 50 yards downfield. That's a lot of 5 and 10 yard passes that, like I said, Don Hutson is just running circles around everybody down the field.
Quite literally, yeah. So as I mentioned on the teaser before, I said, well, what are the average stats of a Hall of Fame wide receiver? Now, again, this is for a wide receiver not tight end, not end, just the 22 men that are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. What do they have in common? Kind of what's the mean of their statistics? And this is per Pro Football Reference. If you want to waste a bunch of time and you're like a stat nerd,
that is not wasting time. That is glorious
No,
time looking at Pro Football Reference.
All right, time well spent, fine, but time goes very quickly when you are on said website. So the 22 men, 22 wide receivers in the Hall of Fame, the commonality is one championship, roughly 12 years as a primary starter, 6 Pro Bowl selections, 2 first-team All-Pros, 189 games played, 169 games started, 748 receptions, 11,532 yards, and 90 touchdowns. Now, I'm kind of a dork. What I did not do is I did not take out Jerry Rice's numbers, because my guess is that without his numbers, these numbers would be way different. He's so skewed. He was so far above and beyond any other receiver in the Hall of Fame or otherwise. But
I think that, you go into Don Hutson and how incredibly was that, right? That 17 touchdowns that he had in 1942 was not broken until the 1984 Dan Marino Dolphins did. There was Mark Clayton went over 17 touchdowns, and that's obviously in a 16-game season. Yeah. I mean, Jerry Rice was breaking Don Hutson records, and Jerry Rice, again, 40 years after, as far as the time frame is concerned, with a game
Steve
that was
Largent did it before Jerry Rice did it. You got to remember, Steve Largent is the one who eclipsed that 99 touchdown record.
That's true. Yeah.
Nobody wants to remember those. Nobody wants to remember those Seattle Seahawks players, except people who live out in the Pacific Northwest. So I've got a couple other kind of trivia questions we can just throw in here at garbage time, if you will.
We'll see how we do here on the fly.
All right. So alphabetically, who is the first name in the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
Alan Amici.
No. Herb Adderley. Come on, guys.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right.
So I found this fascinating. Of the 16 players and 19 players and coaches inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in the first 2 years of existence, so 1963 and 1964, of those 19 people, 19 men, how many were Packers?
I think it's 4. It's
wrong.
No, I got it. It's Lambeau, Hudson, Cal Hubbard, and Mike Mikulski were in the inaugural class. And then the second year, I want to say added Tony Canadeo. Am I on the right track still?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, so I've got 5. I've got 5 correct, right? Tony Canadeo and Arnie Herber, 6.
The number is 6. Well done, sir.
Did I have the correct 6?
Write them down.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Jeff. No, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. I had the correct 6.
Sure.
Off the top of my head.
Look in your damn book. Here, look at this.
My book is closed over here. I got that off the top of my head. I will grab it now, though, just to verify. Trust but verify.
So one more trivia question here. How many or what NFL position recognized today has the most Hall of Fame players? So there's a total of, including the class of 2022, there's 306 players in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. There's 29 contributors, 27 coaches. What position do you think has the most Hall of Fame players?
Has to be quarterbacks.
Wrong. Not even close.
Running backs?
Nope.
End? Split end receiver?
And there's only 11. 38 is the number. Any guesses from there?
It's not kickers, so just give us the answer.
Defensive backs.
D-backs. Okay.
Yeah,
D-backs.
but you got to divide that by 4 for, if you go divide by the number of players that play that position, I'm going to say the quarterbacks are going to win.
That's a position that's been around pretty much since the beginning. See, that's why. So there's 22 wide receivers, but 11 ends, right? And then tight ends as well. So it's kind of, diluted. But yeah, so there's 38 defensive backs as of 2022's class in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
So I'm going to go back and amend the trivia question. So I had 6 as the number was correct, but I had Arnie Herber and Tony Canadeo in there. Those were incorrect, but I did have one of the tough ones. Mike Mikulski was 64. Don Hutson, Cal Hubbard, and Curly Lambeau. Cal Hubbard also is the only person in the football and baseball halls of fame.
You are correct, sir.
The 2 that I missed from 1964, Clark Hinkle. You may have heard his name around
Clark
Green Bay.
Hinkle Field. Yep.
And then I'm very upset with myself from 1963, missing one of my all-time favorite Packer players, Johnny Blood McNally.
There you go.
One of the players that was helpful as far as getting Hutson to decide to go to the Packers, and Curly Lambeau loved the concept of having this 1-2 punch with Johnny Blood McNally and Don Hutson, and essentially giving the defense no chance. So
which he was right.
So I want to go back to Don Hutson for 2 other things. So first of all, we've obviously talked of all his accolades and stats. He was obviously on the NFL all 50-year team, 75-year team, also on the all 100-year NFL team. This is somebody whose importance to the NFL has been certainly recognized over NFL history, but he was also a gentleman. And so my next door neighbor actually interacted with Don Hutson frequently. My next door neighbor, who's now 96 years old, Rita Houston. When she was young, she would go to Green Bay East, and Don Hutson would ride the bus for whatever he was doing. And Don Hutson would always stand up and let my neighbor sit down. So, somebody who certainly had his manners in place.
Wow. Only in Green Bay, right? That's a fabulous story.
And as we said, not much for the show this week. And we kind of jumped ahead a week here. We're going every other week here in the off season, but we're going to be off the next couple of weeks. We got vacation coming up here. Jeff, you're heading to Green Bay. We'll see you this weekend. After our vacation, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. I might even tell everybody about the world's largest trivia contest that's coming up. Neil, though, you've got a big thing coming up here in the next 2 weeks. Neil, what you got going on?
I'm heading to Argentina, and this is a celebration of turning 50. Now, all of us turned 50 2 years ago. So you're asking, why do I celebrate going to Argentina for turning 50 now? Well, I was supposed to go to Argentina. My birthday's was just in the last week. And I'm celebrating going to Argentina to turn 50. And that was a trip that was supposed to be in late March 2020. And well, you all know what happened in late March 2020. And the flight was canceled. I was thankfully not stranded in Argentina for a 6 to 12 month period. Although, with all that's going on in Ukraine and Russia, if I happen to be stranded in Argentina this time and there's any conflict, it's probably not the worst place to be. There's a lot of great wine, a lot of great food in Argentina. I'm looking forward to some really spectacular steak and spectacular wine and a lot of views of the Andes and great culture. So.
Me too, Neil. That's why I'm going to Green Bay.
Yeah, Venezuela, not so much, Neil, but Argentina, I think you're safe.
Get a little bit into Uruguay and possibly Chile as well, depending on how the border guards feel. But yeah, nice. It's going to be good.
All right. Well, we look forward to a story in a couple of weeks. Jeff, anything else before we go?
No, just looking forward to headed back to the GBC. Like it's tax season, but that's more information than you want to know. But that's why I'm going back. Help out mom with taxes.
Right. Well, good luck with that. Hey, everyone, get information on the GBC podcast at Green Bay Chat on Twitter and on Facebook at the GBC podcast Green Bay Chat. And may you fully appreciate the magnitude of your impending good fortune. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
Good night.